Hey, welcome back to Rust Order Garage and yet another Amazon slash eBay wiring harness review. Now, first off, I'll say that this is going to be for a harness, standalone harness for, call it 1999 to 2002, drive-by cable with a 4L60E transmission. If you are doing an 03 to 07 Classic Gen 3 engine with the drive-by wire setup, please check out my other video where I go over that whole harness and detail fuse information, wiring information, and such on that harness. This is going to be specifically for the 9902 drive-by cable, which is very different. Also, I want to say, because this is going to be a very different video, covering this harness, please watch the whole thing, because if you are interested in one of these, you're going to want to watch everything. Don't just fast forward to like what fuse is what, because none of that's going to mean anything if you don't know how to use this harness. All right, so I bought this red and blue. Why would I buy red and blue? Well, the Hudson project is wrapping up. It's getting at least to the point where it's going to be on the road. And I'm going to be back on the Turbo Buick. So I needed a harness for that, because that's running, I think I have an 01 4.8 in it, and I'm going to run the turbo on. So in my other video I did of the $99 eBay drive-by wire harness, I bugged out every wire on that harness, checked everything out against pinouts that you can get from lt1swap.com or look at actual schematics for the vehicle. And everything was good. That harness is in my 51 Hudson, which is still a project in progress, if you want to check that out. That harness is in that car, and everything fired right up first shot, no problem. Now, this is a different story. When I did the video for the drive-by wire, and of course it worked out great, I got lots of messages from people asking me, put a link. So I need to buy this harness. I need to get a good one. Put a link so I can make sure I get it from the same person. Well, and I reply, doesn't matter who you buy it from, okay? eBay, Amazon, they're all selling the same stuff. And it doesn't matter. It's not like that company is doing anything different than anyone else. And the reason for that is, and what you have to remember here is, nobody is engineering anything here. Nobody is designing anything here. All they're doing is copying what GM did. So they're just taking GM schematics, hopefully, making a harness and selling it to you. So, as an example here, I purchased this harness from the same manufacturer that made my drive-by wire harness, and that harness was flawless. This one is a mess. Not only was this harness a mess, lots of people on YouTube have had problems or made videos about how to fix these harnesses, and I've seen things online where people say they're garbage and whatever. Well, instead of just like accepting that as fact, my question is, why are they garbage? Why are they wrong? I mean, like I said, nobody is engineering anything. They're just copying. So why is this so bad? Well, I'll tell you why it's so bad and why it can be fixed and made to be no problems at all. Like I said, the Japanese or Chinese companies that are making these are just copying GM stuff. How many of you out there doing a 99 to 02 drive-by cable swap have an honest-to-goodness aluminum LS1 in their possession, and that's what they're installing? And how many of you are installing a 99 to 02 iron block vortec engine from a Silverado or similar vehicle? Well, you get into the, that's not a real LS1, and then people saying they're all the same, and LS1 is the same as a vortec, and what does it matter? Well, it matters a lot. And the reason for that is, and the reason that you are having so many problems with this red and blue harness is, this harness is designed to be used on an aluminum LS1. And what that means is the aluminum LS1 and the operating system and program that went with that aluminum LS1. This is not designed to be used with a 99-02 vortec truck engine. And that's not because the company that made this is doing anything wrong. They're just copying an LS1 diagram and putting it out there as 99-02 drive-by cable. If you just plug this into your vortec 99-02 without going through this harness and checking every pin, it's not going to work. And I'll have to say that's probably the case for every eBay or Amazon harness. Does that mean this is garbage and you shouldn't buy it? Well, that's up to you. I'm going to show you how to make this functional. And if you can do that work, which isn't difficult, you can make this work with your vortec engine. But the main reason it doesn't, and why people have so many problems, is you have to consider this harness as for an LS1. And everybody's going to say, an LS1 is the same as a vortec and yada, yada, yada. Well, it isn't. And I'll show you how it isn't. So just to back up my information, or the theory that proved correct, that this is an LS1 harness and not designed for a 99-02 truck engine, is just the way it's designed. Everything here is for LS1. It's got EV1 connectors on it, okay? That's not for a truck. Truck uses Multec. Now, this harness came with adapters to run to the Multec, which is cool. That's fine. I'll use those. The other thing with this harness is, unlike a truck harness, it's going to have a two-piece connector for the mass airflow and the intake air temperature. On a truck, that's all one connector. And on my 03 up harness, it was all one connector. This is two. Now, if you're putting this in a truck, you're going to have to get a truck connector and tie the wires in and make it work. For me, I'm going to be running speed density. So I actually wanted the IAT stripped out of the harness and with its own connector. I'm just going to not use the MAF at all. So that works out well for this. But that just is another thing that shows you this is an LS1 harness. It's not a truck harness. And if it was the same, I wouldn't have all these notes in front of me. So, and I'll put information up as well with pictures. So the first thing I do with any one of these eBay harnesses is I pull up the information from lt1swap.com or whatever you want to use. And I don't have color on my printer right now, but these are, 99-02 printouts that you'll find on their page, and basically lists all the wires that are in these connectors and where they go and how they work. I also have a printout of all the real LT1 pinouts, okay? And I didn't know, but they are actually on LT1 Swap as well. I'll post a picture showing them. Maybe you can blow them up and use them. But how I came to all of this conclusion was, like I said, first thing I'm going to do with any of these harnesses, because I don't trust anybody, is bug out all of these wires. And how do you do that once you have the information? Well, get yourself a meter. This is nothing special. This is a Harbor Freight special. And I'll use, basically put this on a diode check or ohm reading if you want. And the way this works is you'll just basically touch the pin in the connector and find it on the other end of the harness and make sure they're in the right place. So when you touch these together, you hear the little alarm there, the beep there tells you have continuity. You can also just do it on any resistance and it'll just go and show you zero resistance. You know you're connected. Now to get into these small pins, what I'll do is I'll just use a alligator jumper wire, and I'll use a piece of MIG wire, and that works good to just stick in the pins. That way I can check every single pin and every single position and make sure they're correct. So of course I got this harness and I started going through it using the pinouts for the 99 to 02 Vortec truck, because that's what I'm putting in, a 99 to 02 truck engine. And right away I started finding discrepancies, missing wires in different positions. And I'm like, how can this be? How, you know, like I said, these guys are not engineering anything. All they're doing is copying a print and making a harness. Why would everything be out of place or anything out of place? And that is, as I said before, because this is made for a 99 to 02 F-body Camaro Z28 Trans Am. It is not the same as a 99 to 02 truck. And I'm going to give you everything I found that was different and how to fix it. And also keep in mind, this is going to be for one of these, you know, stripped down standalone harnesses. When I have a missing wire on this standalone harness, it may exist on the GM harness. It has probably a different function, but it may be there. It's not going to be on here because it wasn't needed for standalone use, like something for the EVAP system or something like that. Whereas the GM harness would still have it, it's not going to be on here. Here's my list. All right, here we go. Let's start. This is what I found as I was doing the trace out of all these pins. The first thing, on the blue connector, let's see here. Yeah. Blue connector, pin number 8. On the Camaro, that is for your throttle position sensor, 5 volts. Okay, your reference, 5 volts. Now, on the truck, blue pin 8 is not used. The TPS 5 volt reference on a truck is in blue pin 46. So the first thing you have to do is take the wire out of position blue 8 and move it to blue 46. Next thing, also on the blue connector, pin 47 on a Camaro is not used. It was, well, it's used, but it was removed. It would be for EGR. It's not going to be there on this standalone harness. So I had no wire in the blue pin, blue connector pin 47. But the truck wants 5 volt reference in that position for the map sensor, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to move the wire from blue 48 to blue 47, okay? That will move the Camaro 5 volt reference for the map sensor into the truck 5 volt reference for the map sensor position. And keep in mind, I'm doing this so that if you had to troubleshoot your harness, wires are going to be in the right location. If you had a GM harness, there might already be a 5 volt reference in that position, but for a different function. And then if you tried to trace it, you'd have a problem. So keep in mind, everything I'm saying here is if you're working on a standalone harness and you're trying to make it correct, at least so you can troubleshoot it in the future, all right? So again, blue 47 did not have a wire, but it's supposed to be there. And that wire is going to be from B48. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing. This is for the map sensor 5 volt reference. Move B48 to B47. Third item, also on the blue connector, there are 2 pins that are flip-flopped for either the Camaro or the truck. On the Camaro, blue pin 54 is the map sensor low reference, the ground. On the truck, that would be blue 60. So basically, we want to flip these wires, all right? You're working with the map sensor low reference ground and the TPS low reference ground. So we're going to move blue 54 to blue 60, blue 60 to blue 54. That will get those wires in the correct positions. All right, fourth item, and a little extra information. And this can get confusing. Blue pin 63 on the Camaro harness, there was nothing there. On the truck, that can be one of two things. It can be the coolant temperature, the whatever you want to call it, CTS, ECT, whatever, the coolant temperature switch ground. Or if you use referenced ground oxygen sensors, it could be the ground for those. And this is where it gets a little confusing, because these trucks use both case grounded and reference grounded oxygen sensors. Difference being, just like it sounds, on the one wire, which is supposed to be tan but isn't on this harness, if it's a case grounded O2 sensor, internally the case is grounded to that tan wire and then it runs back to the PCM. If it's a reference ground O2 sensor, there is no internal wire. It's just a wire that runs back to the PCM, and then it also needs to go to 63. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wire this up for case-grounded oxygen sensors, and I'm going to buy case-grounded oxygen sensors for a 2000 Z28 and put this in the car. And if upon fire up, I find that my O2 sensors are not switching and not working, then I'm going to have to figure that my operating system is looking for reference grounded O2 sensors, and I'm going to have to revisit this and come back. But for the moment, I'm going to set this up as if it has case grounded O2 sensors, which is an option for the trucks, obviously here. So in order to do that, we're going to move pin blue 80 to blue 63. What that's going to do is going to move the coolant temperature sensor ground into the correct position for the truck harness using case grounded oxygen sensors. I think the baby's behind me. What's the baby? That's Ahsoka. Next item, also on the blue connector. Blue pin 75, which is a PCM ignition source. Not here. Didn't exist. Why? Not used on the Camaro. Truck needs it. So there's already one other key-on PCM ignition wire here, and that is blue 19. So what you're going to have to do is get to the junkyard and get one of these connectors and steal a wire with a pin on it, or get these pins and make your own wire. But you're going to have to add a wire in position blue 75 and solder that into blue 19 so that you have both PCM 12-volt key-on inputs to your PCM. Because without that, you're missing power in on one side. So that is 5 items. That was wrong. I don't say wrong. Those are 5 items that are not wrong. They're different between the LS1 and the vortec truck. So as a quick rundown of those 5 items fast, without going into all the details, and hopefully I explained them correctly. I'll probably have to watch this video and see if I screwed up, because I'm probably not doing it that great, but I'm trying to do the best I can here and not miss anything. First item, move pin blue 8 to blue 46. Second item, move pin blue 48 to blue 47. Third item, move pin blue 54 to blue 60 and vice versa. Fourth item, move pin blue 80 to blue 63. Here's the fourth item. Fifth item, blue 75 is going to need a wire installed. You can tie into blue 19 to get that wire. All right, so that's 5 things that are different between the LS1 harness and a truck harness. Again, doesn't mean they made it wrong. They made it right. You're just doing the wrong thing with it. Now, there's one more thing that I found that is different between the LS1 and the truck harness, and that is the wire on pin red 52. Now, the way the truck harness works is normally you'll have, on the Gen 3 anyway, you're going to have 2 wires you're going to use on the alternator. one to turn it on, and one as a reference to control the output. Now, the F-body uses a different alternator. This harness does not have a wire in pin red 52. So the alternator plug, which is laying here somewhere, only has one wire on it, okay? Now, I don't remember which pin location that second wire goes. I'm going to look it up, because here's the deal. I'm going to install this like this, but what happens is if the alternator just defaults to like 13 volts charging, and no matter how much load you put on it, it only gives you 13 volts, you're going to want to install that second wire from red 52 over to the alternator connector. So I'm going to have to see how that works out. I don't know if I'm going to put this on like an engine stand engine first before I put it on the car, or what the deal is, but that wire may need to be added, because if you don't, the alternator is only going to give you 13 volts, and that may not be enough under all conditions. Okay, now, so we've gone over 6 different, I'll call it design differences between the LS1 and the truck harness. Now we're going to get into what they screwed up. Here were problems that I had on this harness that are irregardless of being LS1 or truck. That's why you need to bug out every single wire when you get one of these harnesses. You need to make sure things are right. You can wreck stuff. It's not worth it. Now, the problem I had was on the automatic transmission side. I had a wire. Everything was going fine. I was bugging them all out. I got down to the last wire, and I have a white wire in blue 79 that's supposed to go down to pin S on my connector here. And I'm looking at the connector, and I get to S, and there's no white wire. In fact, there's no white wire anywhere. There was a brown wire in connection S. And then I'm supposed to have a brown wire in position T, and one with a black stripe. I'm sorry, the brown was in U, one with the black stripe was in T. But one of those was missing. Basically, the brown wire that goes to U position was in the S position. And I had no white wire that was supposed to be in S. Interesting. So, I knew the white wire was in there somewhere because it's connected to here. So I cut this back a few inches, and what did I find? I found the white wire. It was taped off. Why? I have no idea. It's used on every 4L60 from 1999. So there was absolutely no reason for that white wire to be taped off. It had the pin on it and everything. It was ready to install. So I had to remove the brown wire from the S position and move it over to the U position where it belonged, and connect the white wire in S where it belonged. After that, golden, no issues. So that's one thing that was manufacturer error. Absolutely. One other thing, manufacturer error, and it's the common one. My tack wire here was tied, it's a white wire in my underdash bundle here, was connected to 12 volts. The 12 volt line that runs to the ALDL port, because it's also a white wire. That's a common problem with these harnesses. Why is that? Well, here's the best I can figure. In 1999 to 02, in the F-body, there was no true tack wire. The tack and cluster information was sent over serial data, okay? So it's a little confusing. You have a serial data wire in here. I don't know if they didn't know what to do with that wire, because a lot of times if you look at the schematics for a 99 to 02 F-body, it will show the white wire coming out of the PCM and going into the traction control unit. And after that, woo, who knows, right? So I don't know if they just said it's white, tie it to the white wire. I don't know. All I know is it's wrong and it's an easy fix. The actual splice, that wire is, I didn't write down what it is. Let me see here. I believe it's on the red connector. Yeah, it's going to be on the red connector. Let me look at my notes here. Tack. Yeah, pin 10, position 10. All right. So red position 10 is the tack output wire. And it's a little tight. Yeah, that's it, red 10. So all I had to do was cut open the trunk coming out of here, and I found the splice down here somewhere. And it basically was that white wire tied to the white wire running down to ALDL port and tied to the wire running over to the under dash mess. And it was easy to fix, and I actually took a small video of it when I fixed it. I'll throw that up now. All right, here's the offending splice. This is actually the tack signal wire coming out of the PCM, and then it's spliced into two more wires, and one of them goes to the ALDL port and one of them goes to power. So that's not right. There is supposed to be power to the ALDL port, but not power on the tack line. So I'm going to cut that open and set it up so that the tack wire is a straight shot out to the bundle, and the 12 volts is a straight shot to the ALDL port. And then that'll fix that. All right, there are all the wires that were spliced together. I'm just going to figure out which one goes to the tack, which one is power in, and which one goes out to the ALDL port. So it's easy to fix. Just for an example, say this is power in from the fuse box, and that's the ALDL wire. I'll tie those together, and then that's the tack out signal. And if that's the tack wire over there, I'll tie those together. It's very simple. You can do it. It's not hard to solder. You can get it done. All right, there we go. Figured out which is which, soldered them together, tape them off, and tape up the harness, and that'll be it. All right, so I think I have gone over everything that you'll need to do to make one of these harnesses work. If it sounds like it's too much for you to do, hey, that's no problem with that. Go with one of the more expensive harnesses. But what I would specifically ask them is the harness they're sending you, is it for an LS1 or is it for a vortec? Because they're different. So all these places advertising harnesses that are more expensive, did they do what I just told you to do? Did they put wires in the correct position so that when you plug it in, it works? Because an LS1 harness is not the same as a vortec harness. It just isn't. Hey, baby. So you've got to make sure you have the harness for what you need, for what you're running. So I said it's very important to know exactly what you have and what you need to make it work. And I would not plug and play anybody's harness without spending, it takes an hour, 2 hours if you're slow, to pin out every wire on this harness and make sure it goes to the right places. It just isn't worth not doing it, because you can just do some damage. So now that we've gone over everything to make it work, now I'm going to give you information like what fuse goes to what and what this mess of wires is for. And also regarding those changes that we went over that you have to do to make this harness the same as a truck harness, I'm going to post up pictures of the pinouts next to each other. So on the left side will be the F-body, and on the right side will be the Vortec truck. And you can look at those line by line, and you can see where I found the differences, and you'll understand why we had to make those changes in order to get this harness to work with the truck setup. All right, so here's the fuse box that comes on this harness, and it's the same fuse box that was on my 03 up harness. Fuses are, I think, feeding different circuits. I'd have to review my other stuff, but I believe it is that case. You have two relays. This is the ignition relay, and that's a fuel pump relay, and we're going to go over those. But first, I'm going to give you all the fuse locations as far as what they feed, all right? We're going to call it 1 through 7, left to right, all right? Fuse 1 is for the PCM ignition supply, okay? So that feeds the PCM, the 2 wires on the blue connector, including the one you had to jumper over. Position 2 is feeding your mass air flow sensor and both of your oxygen sensors. Fuse number 3 is feeding the bank 2 injectors and the bank 2 coils. Fuse number 4 is feeding the bank 1 injectors and the bank 1 coils. Fuse number 5 is feeding the transmission. Fuse number 6 is feeding your ALDL port. And fuse number 7 is feeding your PCM battery lines to your PCM connectors. I think they may also both be on blue. I can't remember, but there's 2 wires, and they're fed from that fuse. The first 5 fuses here are fed power from this ignition relay. So when this relay turns on, it sends power down to these first 5 relays. These last 2 here are actually fed power from the fusible links on the harness, which are the 2 red wires that go down to your starter lug. And for more detail on, those connections and such, you could check out the 03 up video. It's the same stuff. Now, as far as wiring up this relay box, it's going to be the same as the 03 harness that I did. So you could check out that video too in case I missed something. But basically, to energize this relay here and feed power to those first 5 fuses, this wire here needs to be connected to 12 volts, key on, and cranking. That's a big problem with people having issues when they do an LS swap and they can't figure out why it won't start. Make sure the wire that feeds this has power while you're cranking as well. Now, if you're doing an older vehicle that might have had an HEI on it, an ignition wire to the coil, you can use that. The only issue is if you're using an older vehicle that had points, and especially on GM, they used a resistance wire. It was not just a plain old wire. It actually was a resistance wire, and it'll only give 9 volts out of it instead of 12. You don't want that. So make sure whatever wire you're going to use, if it fed your coil or fed your distributor, put a DVM on it. Make sure you have a full 12 volts with key on and key cranking. Looking at the back of the fuse box, same situation as the harness for your 03 up. You have your ignition relay on this side, and you have your fuel pump relay on this side, which is missing wires. And once again, and you can tell by the wire sizes here, why do we use a relay? Well, a relay is basically a high current switch. So if you want to control something that draws a lot of current and control it with a switch, you don't want to have to use really heavy wires everywhere. So you'll notice, you can tell here, we have some smaller wires. We have the black ground here, and we have the trigger wire here, and we have some heavier red wires. Basically, the way this works is there's a coil inside here with a set of points. And the black wire is tied to ground. And the red wire is tied to your key on and cranking on power. And when you send power to this wire, the coil inside is going to activate, close a set of points, and send existing power from here over to the other side, and then that will feed whatever device you have. That said, you notice over here on the fuel pump relay, we only have 2 wires. Why they do it like this, I don't know, but it is what it is. These are the wires for the coil inside the relay. So you have a black, which is already grounded, and you have this green wire, which is a trigger wire from the PCM. It is pretty much the only wire I know of as far as coming out of the PCM for a trigger that is 12 volts. Usually it sends a ground, but that's 12 volts. So when 12 volts goes here, the coil inside will turn on, the points will close, and power will be sent from here to here. Problem is, you don't have anything here. So the way this will be is, you're going to want to hook up fused 12 volts all the time. So battery power, fused 12 volts on a heavy, like a 10 gauge wire to this connector. And then this side is going to be also, I would hope, at least a 10 gauge wire feeding your fuel pump, unless you're using a really small fuel pump. But if you're using at least a 255 Walbro or something, I would want a 10 gauge wire out of here. So that would run to the hot side of the fuel pump, and then the other side of the fuel pump would go to ground. As far as the spade connectors you're going to need to put in here, because they don't come with the harness, I went over that on my other video with the 03 harness, because I had to buy them from Amazon. I bought a bag of them for next to nothing. I think they were 6.3 millimeter off the top of my head, but double check that video because I took pictures of them. And there's the connectors, the spade connectors have to have a locking tab. They make them with and without. You're going to want them with the locking tab so that they snap into place, and then you'll have your wires that you need to run your fuel pump. All right, so that's the fuel pump, or that's the fuse box information. And again, I went over the same pretty much fuse box on my 03 to 07 Classic wiring harness video, and there may be some more detail for you there. Also, if you find the first start video for the 51 Hudson build, in that video, that's where I show the connectors for this, install them, wire up the fuel pump, wire up the power to this, and do the first start. So that goes over all that information. I think the last thing, and I won't say yet, but I think it's the last thing, to go over on this harness is the underdash bundle. All right, so this is a little different than the 03. First off, right away, when you look at the bundle, there'll be a couple wires that don't have the ends stripped off of them. Those are supposed to be F-body only for water temp and oil pressure. And that's 98 only stuff as far as I know. And it goes into the harness, and I think it's just cut off. You don't need them. The wires you're going to need from this bundle, we'll go over them. Black wire is your VSS. That's your speed sensor. That's going to your electric speedometer, so you have speed if you're going to run electric speedometer. We have a white wire. That's to the tach. Okay. We have an orange wire. This is park neutral input. It is not neutral safety. What it is just an input to the PCM telling you you're in park or neutral. I don't use a switch to control that, so I don't use that one. Next we have the brown wire. This is for your service engine soon light. It is a ground trigger from the PCM. So for your service engine light, tie 12 volts to one side, and this will be your ground. Throw a code, this will go low, and your light will turn on. Last 3 wires. If you are running an electric fan or fans, plural, and you set it up in your PCM program and turn them on, the green wire will be the trigger for the cooling fan 1 relay. So it'll go low and turn on your relay. And the blue wire will be for fan 2. Again, if you've programmed it into the PCM and turned them on, this will go low and turn on fan number 2. Last wire, purple wire. That is for your TCC lockup on the transmission, for the lockup converter. This is going to need to have 12 volts when your brakes are turned off. And I have a video, I don't know if I posted it yet, on wiring up the TCC, and it goes over this kind of stuff. It's very simple, but you have to have the right switch to do it, or you can use a relay to flip the signal and make it go low instead of high. But basically, nutshell, 12 volts with the brakes off. All right, so I think I went over everything. I hope that was clear. If not, and it was too confusing, feel free to ask questions. I'll try to answer what I can. As far as I'm concerned, this harness is now good to go to use on a 99-02 drive-by cable with a 4L60E truck engine. And this is going to end up being used on my 55 Turbo Buick, because that's what's in it. 2001 4.8, and even though it doesn't have the 4L60E right now, it's got a Turbo 400. You never know what's going to happen in the future, so I wanted the transmission. All right, it's the end of the day, and I just finished putting this video together, and I realize it is a very long video. So if you made it this far, I hope it was worth it. I hope I taught you something. I know I taught myself plenty by going through this harness and understanding just why so many issues with these eBay harnesses. And 99% of it is just because it's just not what we think it is. It's advertised as one thing, and it really isn't. It's something else. Hey, buddy boy. What's up? Want to say hi? So, yeah, this will work out for me after making all the changes, and I hope you understand everything I did here. Again, any questions, throw them up in the comments. I'll answer what I can. I plan on using this harness in the 55 Buick, like I said, and we'll see if I have to switch to the reference grounded O2s or if it works fine with the case grounded O2s, and we'll see if I need to add that extra wire for the alternator plug. In the meantime, hey, check out my other builds. I got lots more cars to build, a lot of wild stuff, a lot of fun stuff. At least I think it's fun. So thank you so much for watching. Have a great night.